Hi, everyone. You are here listening to a conversation between myself, Danny Katz, COPERD, consumer watchdog, and the director of the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, Rebecca White. Director White, thank you for joining me today.
Such a pleasure. Thanks, Danny.
So we are talking today. This week is Consumer Protection Week, and we thought it'd be a good idea to zero in on utilities. So one of the important roles that the Public Utility Commission plays is a consumer protection role, especially in a state like Colorado, where we have many different utilities, but we do have some utilities, and utilities oftentimes, you can't really shop around for your utility. And so there needs to be some kind of a commission, watchdog oversee the decisions that those utilities are making. If you are interested, I had a long conversation with Director White about what is the Public Utilities Commission, and I'll put a link to that below. So we won't spend too much time talking about what the Public Utilities Commission is, but today we really wanted to talk about some examples of decisions the Public Utilities Commission has made recently that help demonstrate some of that consumer protection role that they play. And I think, as we go through some of these decisions, some people at home might be thinking, oh, I want them to do even more, or I want them to do even less. And part of the point here is to remember that the Public Utilities Commission, they have public hearings. There are ways that people can weigh in. And so as you hear some of the stories that we're going to talk about today, I'm hopeful that that also inspires you to weigh in because they want to hear from you. And so it's really important that you're engaging, and there's plenty of decisions that are going to be coming up over the next year. So on that note, again, Director White, thanks for joining me. And, people may not know, like you've been in the position for a couple of years. What inspired you? Why are you the director of the Public Utilities Commission? What inspires you to come to work every day?
Great question, Danny. So yeah, I've been here about 2.5 years. And there's a couple of reasons I'm here. One is I've been a public servant my entire professional life. So about 26 years now in federal and state government. So I have always sought out these sorts of jobs, and the harder the better. But the real reason I jumped over to the Public Utilities Commission, I was at CDOT for about 14 years, is because it's this not very well-known agency, but it has an incredible role to play in the clean energy transition, and moving us off of being reliant on coal-fired power plants. But it also just has such a broad and fascinating portfolio. So everything from railroads to tow trucks, to natural gas pipelines to our utility work. So it's just so fun and so different.
Great. Well, so last time we chatted, it was really kind of the theoretical, like here is what the Public Utilities Commission is, here's what it does on paper. But I wanted to, for Consumer Protection Week at least, kind of walk through some of the recent decisions that have happened and how those decisions, how the PUC has been doing work to help make sure our energy and gas system is safe, make sure that we are healthy, the ones who are using it, to make sure that investments are made cost effectively and efficiently. So from us, from a consumer perspective, we want, a utility system that's safe, that's reliable, that's healthy, that's, cost effective. It's not breaking the bank. And so I think there have been a few decisions that really pop out to me from the over the last 6 months that I think help tell the story of some of the things that you all have had to weigh in on and how you've weighed in on them. And so I wanted to start with this idea. There was this thing called an orange alert last fall, and I was hoping you could explain what was that and how did some of the decisions that the Public Utilities Commission make help influence and mitigate the potential problems that were occurring during that orange alert.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. So it's August 7th, actually, that we had an orange alert for the Excel service territory, and they cover 1.5 million or so people across the Front Range. These are rare in Colorado. If you think of other states like California, that seems to have brownouts quite frequently. We really don't have that in Colorado. So when we hear from a utility that they're going in an orange alert, it's a serious thing. And the scale that they use is much like a stoplight, right? If we're green, we're fine. We have all the resources we need to meet demand even at peak. Yellow means there's a remote possibility that there could be outages. Orange is realistic possibility. And then if we're red, that means we're losing power. So Excel announced an orange alert. We had a hot summer, if people will recall, and that particular alert came during a hot period, but also when we had several units at some of the coal-fired power plants down. And then clouds had moved in, which impacted a little bit some of our solar resources. But really, the big driving factor was both the demand and the fact that the coal plants weren't providing as much as they should have. So one of the things the PUC requires is when we have these sorts of events that the Excel will send out conservation messaging. And that's how most people realized we were in sort of this situation. So they send out to all their customers, hey, we're entering a period where we're having this orange alert. Please do what you can, lower your air conditioning. But what is really interesting about that event is one, we didn't lose power, which is fantastic. And what the PUC learned after the fact was the real reason that we were able to avert a brownout then was because of what you referred to, Danny, sort of this demand side management. So what that means is the PUC has required utilities like Excel to work with their customers to be able to lower demand. Overall, because we want to reduce electricity use all the time, particularly around the peak hours, but also to have certain customers who will be super responsive. And that when Excel sends out an alert, they will say, okay, I'm going to switch over to a generator, I'm going to power down. And through a variety of those measures, about 500 megawatts of demand was reduced, which is a huge amount.
Yeah, I mean that's at least a large power plant's worth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was just from customer responsiveness, which is just fantastic. That is exactly what we want to see. That the customers who can reduce do in the moment, and they keep the grid reliable. So I
Yeah,
mean,
and some of that, I mean, you mentioned messaging, but also a lot of it is it's more institutionalized, right? So some of the systems are, people have, they might have heard of a smart thermometer, and so, Excel's able or any utility is able to kind of scale back the air conditioning for just a little bit, so that you can, don't need quite as much energy. So it's not just like it wasn't just a message, hey, folks, please, do this, but there were actual systems in place, right?
yeah, very good point. There's about half a dozen programs that the PUC has worked with Excel or required Excel to use. Smart thermostats is one. A saver switch program. We have certain large customers that have agreed to interruptible power. So they, as part of their contract, say, okay, if you need to cut us off, you can do that. So it is very strategic in that they deployed those programs, and then some of the messaging helped too. I think some people just took responsibility in their own household and said, "All right, I can deal with a little bit warmer." But it was really in the end a success story because it's so impactful, as everyone watching this knows, when we lose power,
Yeah.
particularly on hot days.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, unexpected closures from some of the power plants, some weather conditions, both the sun, the heat, and some clouds, all that added up to a moment
Yep.
where it felt like maybe we weren't going to be producing enough energy to meet the demand. But because of these decisions made by the PUC earlier, including some requirements for utilities to use this demand side, this energy efficiency strategies, it actually turned out to not result in any sort of, brownouts or outages. Does that sound right?
It does. And the other piece I would add, though, is another part of our job is just the reliability around the year, right? So we require the utilities we regulate to keep about a 15% reserve margin. So that means they always have a little bit more power than we think they will need. And that's why it is so unusual that we see these occurrences in Colorado. We have a very stable, reliable system. And that's also because the PUC is out there regulating.
Sure. All right. So those are two good examples of like, how the PUC plays an important role in this space. I think we also, another thing that came up, sometimes utilities come in with very large proposals, hey, we want to build a lot more, power generation. And obviously everything that's built needs to be paid for in some way. And so consumers oftentimes our bills are part of it is being used to pay for things that have been built. And so I know, at least from the COPERC perspective, we were a little concerned about the size of the proposal. And so can you talk a little bit about how what the PUC did to take a look at this, fairly large proposal and scale it back?
Sure. Love to talk about that. So, just as a bit of background, so about every 3 to 4 years, the utilities we regulate, which again for electricity is Black Hills and Excel, they come into the PUC with what's called a electric resource plan. And essentially, they're looking out at how much energy they think they're going to have to produce over the next 5 years. That is about their planning horizon. And they will come into us and say, okay, we need X number of megawatts for all these reasons. And therefore, PUC, please approve us to start building and acquiring, whether that be new solar, new wind, storage, natural gas. Very uh, typical process, right? We've been doing this for decades. We're very good at that in Colorado. The utilities come in, we tear apart their analysis, and we sort of make a decision for them how much we agree for them to start building. What is happening recently is changing the stakes of all this. So, as whereas in decades past, a utility would come in with an electric resource plan, it would look a lot like the previous ones. And that, Colorado was a growing state. And so they were needing to increase how much electricity they produce to kind of meet that demand. And as businesses were growing, but it was like a 0.05% growth rate, like really pretty steady. What happened in the last electric resource plan is Excel came in and said, instead of having this sort of flat growth rate, we're actually predicting we're going to need like 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 times that amount of electricity. And there's a few different reasons they were saying that. One is data centers. They're, have kind of been circling around Colorado. We
Yeah.
don't have a lot of them in the state now compared to other states, but it's booming across the nation. They're looking everywhere, and data centers are huge energy demand sources. I mean,
Yeah.
large ones can use as much as an entire city's worth of energy.
Yeah.
So Excel had come in this electric resource plan, and part of the reason they were saying that they needed so much more is they were predicting a certain amount of data centers come in.
Hmm.
There were a couple other factors. We're working really hard in Colorado to get people into electric vehicles. That's a new source of electricity. And what you assume about when people charge their cars matters a lot to how much energy we need to produce. If you assume everybody's plugging their car in at 5 p.m., for instance. Uh, we are also working really hard in the state to electrify homes and move people into clean heat pumps and
Yeah.
natural gas. That's a huge electric source. So a lot of factors coming together in this plan that was submitted, which just showed huge numbers. And why that matters is because that goes directly onto ratepayer bills.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is where the PUC comes in. This is what we are designed to do. Our team has economists and engineers and modeling experts, and really are designed to just challenge these assumptions with the utility.
Yeah.
How many data centers are you assuming? Are they really coming?
Yeah.
And to push back, and that's what we did. I mean, we ended up approving quite a bit of growth, but not near what was requested by the utility. And I think very wisely what the commission said is, all right, we need to prepare for data centers. If they're going to come, they're going to need an energy supply. But what the commission said is we want a contract in place. So we know for sure that they're not speculating, that they're actually going to come here and they're going to stay for a long time, so that
Yeah.
we can wall off ratepayers from that. And that's really the objective, is to just hold residential customers harmless for the
Yeah.
investments needed.
And one of the rubs here, I mean, for there's lots of utilities in Colorado, but you all really just focus in on what's called the for-profit, the investor-owned
Yeah,
ones. And the rub there is, there's more profit to be made the more you build. And so it does really feel like without the PUC there to question some of these assumptions, things could be bigger than they necessarily need to be.
absolutely. Yeah, the way our regulatory model is set up is the utilities make money by spending money because they earn a return on the investment, and that comes from ratepayers. we very much want healthy utilities. We want them to be able to, recruit shareholders and go to the market and get good interest rates. But that's also why you need a public utilities commission, because somebody has to be there on the other side saying, nope, you don't need that. That's too much. Really to keep rates affordable in Colorado. And we've done that. We're about 10% below the national average for energy rates in Colorado.
Great, great. This was kind of a moment that came up that I wasn't expecting, but this around, trying to, I think, quote unquote, fast track some renewables to take advantage of some potential tax credits. Again, we've talked about we as consumers, as utility, the people who are being served by these utilities, our bills are going to pay for the stuff that they're building. And so if there's other money out there like federal tax credits to help make something cheaper, it's going to be good for all of us. And so I know when there was the announcement to repeal some of the tax credits, the PUC was able to relatively quickly make some decisions around renewable energies. Can you talk a little bit about the benefit from being, somewhat nimble on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to, because that's not usually our middle name, Nimble.
Nimble?
We are a slow, deliberative body, and there's many good reasons for that. There's billions of dollars before us, and there's a lot of opportunity for pushback from people and public comment hearings and parties to object to what the commission decided. But another thing that makes this an interesting moment in time, and what you're speaking to, Danny, is there was a pretty dramatic change in the federal tax credits for renewable energy. So that whatever you call it, HR1, OBA, the big beautiful bill, when that passed, it kind of arbitrarily moved forward some really important tax credits for renewable energy. And those, I believe, expire July of this year. Cut them way short. And so by our typical timelines, we wouldn't have been able to make sure that we took advantage of those rebates. And so what we did is this sort of quick process called the near-term procurement, where we told the biggest utility we regulate, Excel, hey, go out there and see what renewable energy projects you can bring forward quickly. And if you get them to us quickly, we're going to take a look at them quickly. And it worked. It took about 3 to 4 months, which again is compared to 15 months usually that it would take us to review something. We got about 4,000 megawatts of energy approved. All but 200 of that is solar, storage, and wind. And that will save customers about $5 billion. And that's the value of the tax credits we were able to take advantage of.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're at a point now where a lot of renewable energy power is cost competitive to some of the older versions, coal, gas, and even cheaper in some ways. So it does feel like this is, if part of our goal as a state is to reduce the amount of pollution we're producing and try to tackle some of that extreme weather that's being fueled by climate change, that it makes sense to try to accelerate renewable energy. And if we can do it in a way that doesn't have as big a cost, that just makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Yep. On a per kilowatt basis, solar, wind, storage, they're all extremely, extremely competitive.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So two more topics to talk about here, and then we'll end with this idea of a sunset. So we want to talk a little bit about that. Time of use rates is another decision that the PUC, has made, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about time of use, because on the face of it, this can oftentimes feel, a consumer. I think we've all gotten the thing in the mail that says
Yeah.
your electricity bill is going to be a little bit more expensive at certain times of the day, and I mean, that can be frustrating when you get that, but there's actually some reason behind that. So can you talk a little bit about the time of use rate?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for asking about that. Because it's been hard for us to kind of get out there and explain why this matters so much, and it does. So what time of use rates do is it makes your electricity a little bit more expensive at the very hardest and most expensive times of the day to produce that energy. And when you look at a mix where we have a lot of renewables coming on, this is really important too. But it's that peak time, right? Um, and utilities have to build for the peak. They don't have to build for what we're all using at 10 a.m. on a Monday. they have to build for the energy that we all need at 5, 6, 7 p.m. at night. So it matters a lot to the cost that we have to pay to produce the system. And if we can lower that peak, that means we have to build less power sources and it saves us all money. So time of use rates are just truly a price signal that says, all right, the price per kilowatt is going to be a little bit more expensive at these 4 hours of the day. But because we wanted to really maintain affordability, what the commission said is the rates in the off-peak time will be that much lower so that even if you did nothing, your power bill is going to stay about the same. So it really is cost neutral, and the utility is not making any more money either, right? Because they're getting less per kilowatt in the other hours of the day. But if we get enough people to respond to that price signal and says, hey, I'd actually like to, save 5, $10 off my energy bill. I'm going to wait to put the dishwasher on until after the kids go to bed, or I'm going to plug in my EV so it runs overnight. If we can get enough people doing that, it'll really matter to lowering the peak. So that's what time of use rates are.
Got it.
Very, very deliberately designed, though, not to raise bills, but only to be there for folks to take advantage of if they want to.
Yeah. And so if we can lower the peak, as you said, if we just don't need as much energy at the peak times, then that saves us money because we don't have to build as much. And it could also have a pollution benefit too, to the extent that any of the power we don't need to build is, fossil fueled. That could also be good for our health and air quality as well. So, all right. So
Absolutely.
that decision, and so basically, the PUC has put into place those time of use policies, and we all have gotten things in the mail if we're Excel or another utility that has that.
Yep. And if you're at all curious, we've got a whole page on our website that explains this and has we even have a video we filmed on what they are and why they're in place.
That's great. Great. So some people might not, to the extent people know the PUC, they may know of these rulemakings that we've mostly been talking about, rulemakings and dockets and
Yep.
decisions that we've been talking about. But you also play a role. I mean, if people have problems, they can submit things through a complaint system. You also have a navigator program that can help people find ways to save money too. Do you want to talk a little bit about that somewhat new program, the Navigator Savings Program?
Yeah. So, the mission of the PUC is safe, reliable, and affordable energy. Um, we're putting a lot more attention into that affordability wing, not just from the perspective of the regulator holding the line when we look at these proceedings, but what more can we be doing? And so we've developed this tool called the Colorado Energy Savings Navigator. And what it does is simply put all the different programs that are out there that can lower your bill. If you're low income, all the bill reduction programs like LEAP, like percentage of income payment programs, but also all the rebates that are out there if folks want to weatherize their home, if they want to move to a heat pump. We had EVs on there and still do, at least for what's left of the tax credits for those. It's all in one place, and all you have to do is enter some very basic demographic information, where you live, so we know your utility, how much money you make. I think there's an age question, so we can figure out if there's senior citizens that have different programs. We're not asking for a name or anything, but you provide that basic demographic information, and it will shoot out for you every single program that you're eligible for. And so that people don't take advantage of these programs enough, I think,
Yeah.
and they're out there and they can make a big difference, both in terms of your utility bill and the really safety and comfort of your home.
Yeah, I mean, we like to say for consumers, you got to be informed and you got to be empowered. And so this is a great tool to help, make sure that everyone here is informed and empowered and taking advantage of this. And you mentioned, energy savings, like it's one of the best ways I think to tackle, utility bills. If you've got a utility bill, making those investments to save yourself money in the long run is really good. So that's a great tool. And then as I mentioned too, if there's problems, people should also be submitting complaints to the PUC. I mean, if there's something that you all can potentially help people with that you want to know about that, so I can put a link in that as well. You don't, I don't think I told you I was going to ask you this, but do you know off the top of your head how many complaints you get a year or, just anything like that?
Oh, I think I do. I was just looking at these numbers. I think just for utility work alone, we got about 1,200 calls last year. We also get a lot of calls on towing, on other areas we navigate, but and regulate. But we get a lot of calls on what's happening with my bill. I got a disconnection notice. All sorts of things.
Yeah.
There's tree removal going on, and I don't know why my utility is doing this, and that's
Yeah.
what we're here for.
Great.
Very
Great.
happy to answer
Um,
those.
Well, so we're having this conversation. It's Consumer Protection Week, but it's also a moment in the PUC, history or timeline. Yeah, you have your sunset right now at the legislature, and so if folks don't know, a sunset basically almost, I think, every agency in Colorado has a review, and the legislature has to review and reauthorize them. There is, in theory, a moment that could happen if they don't reauthorize the PUC that we would not have a Public Utilities Commission moving forward. I'm not hearing anyone advocating for that, so I'm hopeful that is not going to be the case. But this is a chance to for people to weigh in if they see an opportunity for the PUC to be stronger or be able to do their job better. I mean, I think it is worth underscoring. It takes a lot of resources to do the things that you've been describing here, holding the line and regulating these utilities. Can you just talk a little bit about your staffing right now and just, kind of resource wise where you're at?
Sure. And I will say that one comparison I've heard when you compare the staffing and the resources available to Public Utilities Commission in comparison to what we're regulating, it's sort of a David and Goliath, right? Where we have about 110 people at the PUC, um, and a set of resources that allows us to do our base work. But I'm always looking for more because frankly, the smarter and better we are, the better we can protect the public. And so that particularly as are the complexity of the work we have done, we definitely could use some new bodies, and which is part of the reason that this sunset review is so important. It's not only to figure out whether or not the Public Utilities Commission should continue. I sure hope the legislature decides that we should, but it's also opportunity to look at what we regulate and how we regulate, and how can we be a better, stronger entity for the people of Colorado.
Yeah.
And I,
And
I would not be a good PUC director if I didn't say more resources is always helpful.
totally. And I guess we should underscore like how complicated the utility space has gotten. It's not you're trying to keep the lights on and the homes and businesses powered, but we're also working to do that safely. There are some fuels that are, definitely less safe than others. So you mentioned gas pipelines earlier, making sure we're managing the safety aspect, the reliability aspect, the health aspect. So some of the power that we're getting, some of the heat we're getting have come with health benefits or health potential risks. So it seems like there's a lot for you to manage, and a lot of times the PUC you're reacting to proposals from utilities, so your ability to verify seems really important, and that is complex and is not particularly easy.
None of it's easy, I feel like. And the one other piece I would add to your very good list is we're also dealing with wildfire and a changing
Ah,
climate and public
yeah,
safety power shutoffs. And what do we want our utilities to be doing to prevent wildfire? How much of that is proactive in terms of their system improvements, and how much of that is reactive for them and being able to shut down power? So yeah, none of this is easy. It's fascinating, wonderful work, but it
yeah,
requires a lot of very smart, talented people on the other
yeah.
side.
And more isn't always better. I mean, again, you're trying to also
Yep,
manage a healthy and safe and reliable system, but it's also got to be cost effective. And so just building more, even if it sounds like, maybe we need it in 20 years. I mean, there really is a line you need to draw, or else our bills go skyrocketing up. So yeah, very, very important. So if people wanted to weigh in there, it will act like a regular legislative process, a regular bill. So there'll be a bill. It will talk about, the PUC's authority and what you have, the tools you have to work with. So if people want to weigh in on that, they should be weighing in. And I think we can put information to the
yep,
what the bill is going to be and all that in our post here. But it sounds like that would be very helpful for people to weigh in and not only say, hey, let's make sure the PUC stays operational, but also has the tools they need to protect consumers.
Absolutely. Yep. It'd be an exciting legislative session.
Absolutely. Well, we covered a lot. I really appreciate this. It was helpful to actually walk through real life examples instead of like the theoretical, okay, we oversee this, that, and the other. Like we actually have some examples of decisions that were made. And again, I hope people who hear this, they may think that wasn't good enough, or they may think that was too much, or they may think it's just right. But whatever they think, they should be weighing in. I guess it'd be nice for you to just let's just end with you emphasizing like how helpful is it for the PUC commissioners and for you all to hear from the public about decisions that are coming before you?
Oh, I don't know how to emphasize more how important it is. We have a lot of experts that present to us. We hear a lot from the utilities. We hear a lot from the people that are used to coming before us. But there's few things as powerful as hearing from somebody who's struggling to pay their utility bill. And those types of testimonies, as well as how important the clean energy transition to you is, other sort of feedback, it really helps us do our job better. So I'm so happy that you're mentioning that, Danny, and trying very hard on my end to make it as welcoming as an environment I can for the public to weigh in, because we can be kind of a opaque bureaucratic entity, but we really are trying to break down those barriers. So we will take emails, we will take voicemails. We have public comment hearings on almost everything we do. You can send us a postcard. We'll take input any way people want to give it to us and honor
Great.
it.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again and maybe talk
Yeah,
about the future a little bit. But for right now, we did a little look back and we'll update folks who are watching on the sunset as it proceeds. But I'll put more information in the link below. And again, Director White, thank you for spending so much time with us. I really appreciate the conversation.
my pleasure. Thanks so much, Danny.
Thank you.
Bye.